Welcome to The Next Interview, a podcast about careers, life, and achieving our greatest potential. And now, here's your host, Dolan White.
Welcome to The Next Interview. I'm Dolan White, and today I'm interviewing Joseph Clough. And then, Joseph, we're talking about imposter syndrome, adaptability. We're talking about the levels of challenges that you may face as a leader when you're coming into an organization, whether you're a new leader or a seasoned leader, the kind of things that you face and some things that you can do to overcome them that will help you in your career. And leading can be family, friends, business. We're going to focus mostly on business, but some of the principles that Joseph talks about today include things that you can apply definitely to your personal life. So here is Joseph Clough. Let's get started. So hello, everybody. Welcome to the episode with Joseph Clough. And Joseph, I am literally thrilled to be here with you today on this podcast. You played a powerful influence in my leadership skills, and particularly in times when some of the things we'll talk about later in there, when we all experience fear, uncertainty, and doubt.
Yep.
And you played a big role in my success as a CEO and influencing my character. So it's great to have you here. I thought it'd be great just to start with a little bit of an introduction of yourself and kind of how you got started and where you came from, and we'll go on there and have a conversation.
Well, firstly, thank you ever so much. It's an absolute honor to be with you here today, because it sounds like a really exciting project, and you're going to help so many people getting thoughts and ideas out there with all your experience over the years. So thank you, my friend. I appreciate that.
A pleasure.
So a little bit about me. So I always find it hard to say what I do, because I do like coaching, hypnosis. But I would probably say that I work with professionals and entrepreneurs or people in leadership roles to let go of as you said in the beginning there's times of stress, for self-doubt, even things like the imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're going to get found out. You feel like, what does that person think of me? Can I be this leader? Can I do these things?
Yeah.
And that seems to be such a big thing because of the high pressures for those leadership roles. And we were talking just beforehand about it could be even in the family. Like you still have a certain role to play, right? So, and
True.
These from work can have an effect on family and health. It all works as one. But if you can start to let go of those like limiting beliefs of the imposter, or get a control of our anxiety, worries, and doubts, I think that's where we get to really thrive. So that's what I particularly work with.
That's cool. So how did you get started? How did you come into this? What's your a little bit about your history?
Yeah. So I fell into this. It's a weird one, because throughout my whole schooling, I was a C student. I could only think of getting a C, and that's all I ever wanted. Because I just found it very, very hard.
Yeah.
And although I wasn't around back then, that whole imposter syndrome and although anxiety was back then, it really, really had a huge effect on my education and what I thought was possible. And then it got to a point when I was 18 years old, when my dad, my father, Paul Clough, he said, look, you're not happy. You're kind of failing in the exams and all those things. What's really happening here? And he actually sent me, almost forcibly, but in a kind, loving, fatherly way, to a hypnosis training. Because he thought that I could go into a training, go into many different kind of trances and just work myself, hopefully on the other side of that, I might get some clarity on who I am and where I want to be. But the good thing is, on the way home, which was in England, it's a long journey. It's like a 4-hour journey. I know in America, that's just a day out sometimes of a little road trip. But in England, another 4 hours and we're out the country. So that was a long journey for me. Well, on that journey, I was like, wow, this is really, really powerful. The anxiety, the worry, the doubt, that just ceased to exist. And I thought, I want to help as many people as possible to be able to break through their limitations.
Wow.
And ultimately, that was 22 years ago now. So now my work has been on every continent, even Antarctica, which is crazy to think about. And we're
really
around, someone actually asked me the question, like, have you reached all the continents? I was like, I doubt it. So I did a search and there was like 37 downloads of my podcast in Antarctica.
No kidding.
Well, I'm sure they have very boring dark nights, so maybe I have them to sleep or something like that. It's a bit of a boring time down there. But yeah, so with that, 18 plus million downloads across the world. And yeah, I just love helping people break through their issues. Having been there, of course.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's an interesting path, I think, that we have in our life. Like I kind of refer to it sometimes kind of as this golden thread, about the fact that, the path of our experiences and the lessons that we learn they're the stories we go teach and tell.
Yeah. Yeah. I think our biggest issues are our biggest teachers, ultimately. That resistance which shows up kind of makes us evolve and grow. And if we choose to take the challenge on it, of course. But if we can start to lean into it and actually face it, I think, like for me, my anxiety, I didn't mention this, but my chronic blushing in front of small groups. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful for all of that, because if I didn't have that resistance, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of grateful for the pain. Not at the time, but now.
It's interesting. Yeah, it's funny because at the time, at least I can only talk from my experience. I think we can make assumptions about how other people feel. And I'm reminded by other people in my life, and, in particularly, who tell me, this is only I know how I feel, this is kind of my spot. But it's really interesting when we're in those moments. I think a lot of times, and I talk about this, I'll come back to this in a moment about fear and concepts of fear. But I think the idea around the feelings, we make assumptions around how other people feel about us. Mm-hmm. And when we make that assumption, and at least with me, and we embody that, it's easy to kind of let it tilt you off into that uncertainty and doubt and kind of push you over that edge. I know it happened early it's fun because in my career as a musician, I've been a musician my whole life, as you know. And, so I learned to overcome stage fright with being a musician. But it's one thing to perform music and another thing to go be, a speaker and a leader. And that's, it's different dynamics and fear. And, I think it's one of the things I was going to ask you about. It was just kind of that, as a leader, I think it's, and to your point, whether it's family or business or friends or whatever you're leading, there's different dynamics of fear. And there's different moments where fear can overcome kind of your thinking and kind of the way you approach it. So when you're, this is a hard topic to generalize, fear, and uncertainty, but when you're working with, individuals, and we'll stay in kind of the leadership quadrant with business leaders, what things do you see them, typically is the wrong word, but what kind of things do you see that they're afraid of? What are they, what scares them?
For me, it's an interesting one. And I was thinking about this today as I was on like a run about imposter syndrome. Because that's a common thing. And I was thinking like in two levels. The first one is when you're entering the leadership role, and because you've never really done it, or you've done elements of it. So you're not really aware of your capabilities. You're not really, you might have all the logic and all those things. People say you might be really good for this position, but you have that sense of the unknown. But then the second level, which I find really interesting, is once you've got to that place and you've had that success, you then start to get the imposter syndrome in a different way, where you fear the loss of it. Like, am I really able to keep this job? Am I really able to it's almost like if we go into like as an analogy, as a metaphor of an entrepreneur, they may have grew up poor, and they're like, I don't know if I can be an entrepreneur. I don't know if I can do this, and that's the imposter syndrome. And then when they make it, they're like, oh my goodness, what if I lose it? What if all this was really an imposter? So I kind of think that there are a lot of those two phases when it comes to leadership. With the beginning phase of, do I have the ability? And then when we get there, even with experience, we go, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if I do lose this position? Because we've never had these assets, whether it be financially or just the capabilities in our role, that we actually might fear the loss of it. I think that can be a really big one. And then that kind of ties into things like, am I good enough? Am I worthy? Am I deserving? Am I capable? And that can be from our past as a kid. It could be from high expectations from our parental figures. It could be having been laid off. It could have been a broken relationship. These limiting beliefs actually create the fear. And I know I'm going a bit of a tangent, and I just want to say another thing.
Yeah.
That fear to me is never the real issue. Fear is a byproduct of what we believe about ourselves or believe in something.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to feel not worthy or good enough or capable, we have fear. But if I go, I am capable, worthy, deserving, and good enough, how can fear exist? So I think the beliefs and identities we have in those leadership roles, which are usually unconscious, can really be creating that fear and that uncertainty, even if it trickles down into other areas of our life.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting, kind of, you're talking about kind of the two stages or two phases, right? With those coming in and those who are in it. And it's been interesting in my career, both coaching and having been a COO and a CEO in
Sure.
other companies where you're coming in. And I think some of the times, I call it the ghosts of our past.
Mm-hmm.
The ghosts of our past can haunt us, that kind of haunt us with the kind of that thinking, that punitive idea around, well, if I don't get this done, I'm going to get fired. And then if I get fired and I weird stolen brain, I tend to, sometimes it's easy to spin off and start thinking about meteors. Well, if meteors are driving through the universe and then they're going to come into the solar system and gravity's going to ground and they're going to hit the earth and then all life is going to disappear. And in the meantime, it's really a pothole that you're going to, drive around or drive through. So rather than spinning off about meteors. So
yeah, I like that.
Yeah. So and thank you for that too, because I like the kind of that concept around, I think a lot of young leaders, age has nothing to do with it, but young from an experience perspective, stepping into it, I think there is that fear of, or that anxiety is probably a better word. The anxiety around, I've not done this before. How am I not going to screw this up?
Yeah. And if you think of a leader, like one of the biggest fears in life is, say, public speaking. Like some people go, that's a bigger fear than the fear of death. And I'm sure you've heard of this, but even like biologically, being in front of people way back in the day usually meant we did something wrong. Like we're in front of our tribe and we're being brought up in front of everyone. We're being judged, right? In some way, even if we're a leader, we're going to be judged by our people we're trying to lead. So even that biology within us, when we think of a leadership role and getting up on stage in terms of in front of the people you're leading, there is that biological part of us. And I think that the animal part of us, or just like the tribal part of us, which goes, this position holds a lot of weight, but also holds a lot of fear because I am being ultimately judged. People are looking up to me. And therefore, depending on how I act or react or say what I say or how I present or what my tone is like, do I crack when I start to speak? All of those fears and doubts kind of just begin to kind of sprinkle in that experience. And then it's easy to go, should I really be here? And that can be the issue.
Oh boy. Yeah. And it's interesting, I think, when you get to that point and you really truly dwell on that. That's what keeps you up at night.
Yes.
As a CEO, one thing that I hated was the questions when I would get a phone call from a sales rep or somebody and they go, so what keeps you up at night? And it's like, you don't want to know. Because it has nothing to do with anything that you're talking about.
And I think with that, you're responsible for all those people, right? And ultimately, you're responsible for their family, their children, right? Like if we make wrong decisions, then we may have to lay people off. And that is like a huge thing. We're not just responsible for profit or leading this team. We're actually responsible for their children in trickling down on salaries and even just their emotional well-being. If you're like putting them under crazy amount of stress, how that has an effect on their marriage or their relationship. So yeah, there's a huge level of uncertainties. What people don't think about when we're trying to go to sleep, the weighs on our mind.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I had a conversation last week with a gentleman, and we were just talking about his business, and his business has grown over the years, and he's hit a lull in his business. So he's had to go through the thinking of, how do I let people go? How do I lay people off? And it is a big impact. I think one of the things that as a leader, I've always told my teams is we're responsible for house payments, car payments, college payments, kids, vacations, because it's, we all live on a level playing field. We want to succeed, and success is purely an individual measure. Everybody has their own perception of success, but we all want to have a great vacation, a great family. I want to be able to go to Wiener Schnitzel if I want a chili dog. We want to be able to do those kinds of things in our lives. And when you have that custody of multiple individuals, it can be a big burden. So when an executive or leaders, we'll forget the word executives, but leaders are kind of in that mode of they're kind of on that edge, that sword edge of spinning out into fear, uncertainty, and doubt, and imposter syndrome. And I'm not this person. This is a lot to ask in a very short podcast time together. What kind of things can they do to reset themselves, to kind of just in that moment take a pause and bring themselves back? Is there something that you typically say, here's one or two things?
Yeah, it's kind of tricky to kind of do a small thing, but one little mindset I really think I kind of go down a more of a stoic aspect to kind of bring you back into reality.
Sure.
And I heard someone, even just something, and it sounds almost a little bit, I don't see it as negative, but in 100 years, what's it going to really do? In like 200 years, 500 years, 500 years ago, in the great scheme of things, although everything's falling apart now, there's just a brief moment in time. And I think if we can then just go, yes, it's still important, but this state I'm in relation to the context of the time of those asteroids and all those things, everything in the universe, it's okay to just kind of go, okay, this is what I'm going through, and I'm going to move through it. Like this is not who I am. There's just a present emotional state, and it causes a bit of a separation, just a bit of reflection and a perspective. Because as you said earlier, we take things so personally. We kind of distort, we delete, we generalize all these things. And we've got to almost start from a place of detachment and go, is this really mine? Is this emotion? Is this thought, this belief, this present moment? Is it serving me? Is it in conflict? It's not a conflict, in comparison to the future. And I think after a while, you start to go, it's important, but it's not that important, but I should be fretting and staying up all night. And then that should hopefully rebalance your neurology to then take it a fresh step and a fresh perspective at it.
Yeah, that's a really good thinking around it. I would always remind my team, we could end up in another long conversation around delegation and a leader's desire to micromanage their team and the fears that come along with delegating things out to people. And I would remind my team that, there's most things that you're going to do when you have a delegated task or responsibility or a project or other people you have custody of, it's really hard for you to crash this thing into the rocks. It's really hard to do that.
And what did you think that caused them to feel differently by you saying that?
Yeah, and I think there's two things. I think the very first in my mind was to call out the apparent, that there's a fear that I'm assigning something to you or I'm asking you to do something that there would be an inner, I've not done this before, or I'm going to get in trouble if I don't do it exactly right. And then to release them of some of that anxiety or some of that fear by telling them, look, I want you to go out and try things. And it's okay if you make a mistake. It is okay. As long as as the whatever role I was in whether I'm a CEO, COO, manager, director, blah, blah, blah. My role is to make sure then that they're sufficiently resourced and supported so that they know that if they do go out and make a mistake or something goes sideways and they're not quite sure what to do, that it's a conversation around what are the next steps, not I'm going to take this back from you.
Yeah. Which I think that's a brilliant thing. And that's why I want to ask that question, because if I were to receive that, it gives me a less of a feeling of that imposter syndrome. Like this person is trusting me to make decisions, trusting me to even fail, and because they believe in me. So therefore, I'm not going to be like second guessing Dolan all the time. Like, what's he thinking of me? Like, you actually kind of totally reset their neurology by just having that conversation. So I love that.
Yeah, it's interesting. And early in my career, thank you very much for that. I have people who teach me things, not to, call you out by name, but I learn from other people too. But it's fun because, early in my career, I was a software engineer and a highly technical geek dude and got to go do all kinds of crazy, wild stuff. And when I would teach code, I would remind the developers, this is way pre-gray hair, that nobody learns anything by working on things that work.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to look for the error, look for things that you can improve, look for things and be not critical, but self-aware and willing to find those things and step through them and look for what can I do next, whether it's training or whatever you can do to take that next step to do, take responsibility and accountability for your own self improvement. And you mentioned that, that early on kind of in our conversation around those that, when you're working with leaders, there are those that will lean in and accept it and grow, and those that just won't.
So I think if everything's too easy, you're not growing at all. I think if you look at all these companies, they grow. When you're saying that, I couldn't think of the word. It'll probably come back to me. But in that stress, actually, that's when you start to thrive. If you have the right way, like if you look at businesses, when the whole shutdowns of everything, people actually began to thrive. Some people didn't, but they saw it as an opportunity. I'm trying to think of what the word is there, but like Uber, Zoom, all those kind of things, there's an opportunity even in all that stress to be able innovation. That's the word I was looking for. Like you get to innovate, not in calmness, but in actually looking for what doesn't work, or to, as you said, it just causes your brain to start to look for the other side of things. So I like that.
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's not always successful. The great thing about it is I call myself an apprentice learner. It's at 71, it's still, I take great fun in every morning reading and studying and learning new things and stoicism and studying all kinds of different things. But I think that's one of the keys to success. And being imperfect, and I've screwed some things up in my career. Maybe one thing, but anyway, and I think, but that's part of it, is to know how to take those lessons. It's not a failure, but take those lessons, put them into the right perspective, and to step back and really kind of think through what was the cause? What did I do? What am I accountable for? Because at the end of the day, when you're leading, the definition of a true leader is it's not other people, it's me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I don't trust me, and if I'm not willing to invest in me, then I can't ask you to trust me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I'd even add like adaptability in there as well. Like as a leader, you've got to be very adaptable, where people who you're speaking to may not be initially. But if you're
No.
in tough times, you've got to be the adaptable one.
Yeah.
Even just like you think of just like the species of human, how we've adapted to our environment where some species didn't, right? They've died out. So it's innate within us to be able to adapt. And I think a great leader, adding to what you're saying there, is that ability to navigate those waters and storms, and to, even if it's not always working out, to keep on adjusting, adapting, and therefore evolving and keep on learning, right? If you don't wake up every day wanting to learn, I think the brain cells start to slow down a little bit.
Start to atrophy a little bit. Well, they do. And then as we get into this color hair later in our lives, which you've got a long way to go before you get there still. But as we get to this, get to that point in our life, I think it is one of the affirmations that I use is I live at the age of 40. And my intention is to live there mentally, physically, although my wife tells me I sometimes live at the age of 12, but that's a different conversation altogether.
That might be mentality.
That could be, could very well be. I'm not
humor.
I don't know. She tells me stuff and I don't remember. But anyway, but no, I think this is to me, this is very exciting because I think people think of leading in generally as the term as I'm going to go do. And the effect of do, there's really three things, right? We do, manage, and we lead. Three things that we get to go do. And they think if I'm going to go do, and if I do these things, things are going to get better and I'm going to be perceived as a leader. And the act of being a leader is far more complex because of all of the moving parts. And I don't want to scare anybody on the podcast to make it sound like it's hard. But it is more complex and it requires the investment and the time. So
yeah. And just to reframe it, I think that's what's exciting, because some people, like, you don't scare people off. You don't want to see that as a problem. You want to see that as a challenge, right?
right.
It's the evolution. It could be an exciting thing to be pushed in those ways. So yeah, I totally feel like that could be a very motivating thing to hear, because that's where you get to really challenge yourself to figure out who you are and who you can become.
Yeah. I think that's part of it. As Matthew McConaughey, I think I've said this before several times. Matthew McConaughey once gave a speech, other than his all right moment, where he was asked, who is his hero, and his answer was me in 10 years.
Yeah.
And I think to me, that's the journey from a leader's perspective. As to your point, I love your comment around adaptability. I'm going to borrow that, by the way, adaptability.
You can have it. I've probably borrowed it from many different places.
The other thing too is, and then we're kind of coming down to the end of the time in our podcast together here today. And I'm hoping we get to do this together again in a little bit. There's so much to talk about. Every leader has to have someone in their corner.
Yeah.
That is outside of the body of their business, outside of the body of their family, outside of the body of their friends, who will tell them how it is and also give them insights that can help them think through challenges, think through what are the things that I need to do. And I'm personally fortunate because that was our relationship as a CEO. We had that opportunity for you to be in my corner, which helped guide me through a bumpy time when I was facing some challenges as a CEO. Not that CEOs face challenges. So first of all, a sense of gratitude for that. I've never forgotten those things. So when you, in your day-to-day travels and in your business, rather than pivot and say, so how do people get a hold of you and where can they go to your website? What types of people do you love to work with? If you would think of, who are you looking to invest time with, and what other sources, and then how do they find you, and all that other blah, blah, blah stuff. That'll be in the show notes.
Sure. I like people I think I like people who are like us, right? In terms of we are similar attributes, values, missions, purposes, passions. So is it to be a leader? So I really enjoy working with people like myself in terms of they want to play a bigger role or they want to show up more, just regardless of what they're going through, like that imposter syndrome, anxiety, worry. The fact that it's still there and they got that in their heart, they got that desire to still do it despite that resistance. I like those people because they're ready to do something good and to make an impact in so many different ways. So usually, they're more on the leadership, entrepreneurial, professional, desiring to improve themselves. So that's who I like to work with ultimately. So that's the kind of person I like.
And so if someone wants to work with you, how do they do that? How do people reach out to you and say, hey, I think I've got something going on and it would be great to work with you?
Sure, I appreciate that. So just two quick ones. My URL, josephclough.info will be one. I've got .com and .info, but .info is more of this stuff. So josephclough.info. And that's where you get to really apply to work with me. And they get custom hypnosis sessions and all those things to create your day and all the weird and wonderful things. But on top of that, I have my app. You can just type in my name, Joseph Clough, or free hypnosis or hypnosis with Joseph. It's normally number 1 in the App Store. And that means you can download that and listen to, I've got over, sounds amazingly big, but there's over 2,000-3,000 sessions in there. So you can't go wrong on a topic. I've pretty much covered most of them.
Great. That's exciting. Well,
I appreciate you. Thank you.
I would encourage, just from personal experience, I would encourage anybody listening to the podcast to go get the app, go experience your content, get to know you a little bit. And I will remind the leaders with all right intent and all seriousness that one of the things that's important to us as leaders is to have someone who is in our corner. And having someone in your corner doesn't mean it's a lifetime experience. It means that person becomes an advocate, an adversary, a thinking adversary to help you kind of think through things and challenge your thinking. I love your comment about stoicism and stoic approach. So I would offer my personal encouragement, reach out to Joseph. It'll all be in the show notes and all of that stuff. So on closing, I will just tell you, thank you. How grateful
I appreciate it, my friend.
Grateful for you being here with me today. Great conversation.
Thank you for having me. I'm more than happy to come back and talk about anything.
We may talk about running next time. We'll never know.
Yes. You never know. You never know.
All right. Thank you.
Okay, my friend. Speak to you soon. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Next Interview. For more information about today's guest, be sure to visit the show notes. If you enjoyed the show, give us a follow and be sure to join us here on The Next Interview.